Thank you. How many of you here have seen The Minority Report? Do you know what it is? Okay, it's a movie, and it's about a dystopian future. So I will touch on that. So let me start. Oops. So please meet Princess. But before you meet Princess, let me tell you how I met Princess. I was in Costa Rica with 8 Fletcher students. If any of you are here, please raise your hands. Excellent. And we went and documented 71 Odyssean stories just like Princess's. People coming from South Asia, East Africa, West Africa, through Brazil and Peru, northbound to the United States. So why did Princess leave Cameroon? That's where she's from. Well, she had a good reason to. Cameroon is dominated by a Francophone regime, and she is Anglophone. She is the minority that we're talking about here. And she was targeted as an activist for violence. She felt she had no recourse but to abandon her mother and her 2 children and flee with hopes of rejoining them at some point in the future. So let's just imagine, it's a black screen here. Let's imagine her journey from Cameroon until where we met her in Costa Rica. It went something like this. Cameroon to Lagos by bus. She convinces a pastor to buy her plane ticket to Sao Paulo. In Sao Paulo, she works odd jobs. She meets some Senegalese men. They agree to travel north by bus. They go to Rio Branco, they go to Lima, they go to Quito, they go to Medellin. She gets turned back at Medellin because she doesn't have the money to pay the police bribe. She goes back to Quito. She regroups. She borrows money and gets a gift from a friend, enough to buy just 1 bus ticket. She moves north. She makes it through Medellin. She gets to Capurganá, which is at the very edge of the Darin Gap. So let's see what her journey looks like on a map. Something like this, right? And it is not atypical of people like her moving towards the US. Why? Because she can get a visa in Brazil, and you can also get a visa in Ecuador. So this is a common route. So there she is, and she's at the edge of the Darin Gap. So let me describe this. The Darin Gap is 10,000 square miles, about the size of Massachusetts and another half of Massachusetts. And it's jungle that divides North and South America. In fact, no road can go there. The Pan-American highway that goes from Alaska to the tip of Chile cannot pass through the Darin Gap. It's the only place that engineers cannot cut through. It is made of mile-high mountains, fierce jungles, ferocious animals, poisonous plants, raging rivers, and armed bandits and thugs and paramilitary, collectively called by the migrants that traverse this jungle, the mafia. So Princess gets to the edge of this jungle, and she finds a companion, a Cameroonian that she calls the Prof. And he says, I'll guide you through the jungle. Oh, did I mention that Princess is blind? That entire journey I just told you, she's blind. She can't see more than 20 feet in front of herself. She has glaucoma. So he says, I will escort you through the jungle. They begin their journey. A day and a half into the journey, they stumble across a woman, and she has a broken leg. And the Prof says to Princess, I can't take you any further. I have to carry this woman back. I can't live with myself. And she's terrified. And he says, don't worry, I'll hail down a group of people you can travel with. And he finds 4 West African men that she can travel with. And it takes them just about an hour or so before these men find that she's blind, she can't see, and she's slowing them down. And they're furious. They chide her, scoff at her, scold her. And at one point, crossing a river, they're making a human chain. And what do? Try to shake her loose from the human chain. She's a drag on them. Yet she clings to them. She emerges out of the jungle 8 days later, and she finds a woman who's willing to give her $40 worth of money so that she can buy a phone. Why? Because everything was stolen from them in the jungle, and she didn't have much to begin with. So here she is in La Cruz, where we met her, the Fletcher team and myself. And she emerges from a shop, and she is wearing a tank top, flashy shorts, spiffy new sneakers. And she feels like $1 million. And I said, Princess, you really look 100% American. And she gives me a giant hug and she says, really 100% American? And I say, yes, 100% American. And that's the last we see of her. She does text us. She texts us in Tapachula, Mexico, saying that she had been spirited out by a smuggler 2 days later and around Nicaragua, which has sealed its borders. So she takes this tremendous boat ride into Honduras, out of Honduras, into Guatemala, from Guatemala to Mexico. And that is the last we've heard of Princess. But we suspect she's doing fine. So what does Princess's journey look like in 2030? And that was the question that was posed to us. Well, to answer that question, I have to take you to another country. Here we are in China. Now, China has a tremendous surveillance system, right? So here's just an example of it. Cameras everywhere. And the country, the government, is rolling out a very interesting plan that's going to have countrywide coverage by 2020. That's not 2030, that's 2020. And this plan involves surveillance, but so specific that there's facial recognition, that specific people can be identified. This data will be merged and is being merged with data from Ant Financial, from Sesame Credit, from Alibaba, and all of the other commercial structures there. And it's being combined in such a way as to create, and there's 4 cities doing this right now, 2018, a social credit score. So this is a government algorithm that determines your social credit score. All right, so, and it's going to be rolled out by 2020. And what happens with the social credit score? Well, if you're seen to be jaywalking, it goes down. If you're seen to be buying too many video games, it goes down. If you're smoking on trains, it goes down. This is happening right now. And if you owe money, your face goes up on an electronic billboard. If you go through a traffic light, depending on the town, your face, your image goes up on a billboard. You're identified and you're seen. What does this have to do with Princess? Right? We're talking about what's happening in China. Well, Cameroon, which is where Princess is from, has signed a bunch of deals with China. And they have, 2017, bought a ton of surveillance equipment. So remember what's going on in Cameroon now, right? We have the Francophone regime buying equipment to spy on the Anglophones, the minority. Well, who else is in Cameroon? The Chinese are out with it. They're saying, this is what we're doing. We have a national program for social credit scoring and surveillance. The United States is much more surreptitious. We're there as well. We're also in Cameroon. And you can see that we're saying it's because of Boko Haram, but it's really a staging ground for surveillance. We're just not as upfront about it. And as you know, we have the capability in the US to do a lot of surveillance. And it doesn't look very different from what's going on in China. So now let's reimagine Princess's journey. It's 2030, and she has to move from Cameroon, right? She never bothered to do this in 2018, but it's 2030. And the US has an administration, like the Chinese, that doesn't like disloyalty. Does that sound familiar? Okay, so now let's imagine her journey. Close your eyes a moment. She's in Cameroon, and she's trying to get out. But it's impossible to get out because she's identified, and she's tagged as a very important person. She can work in the gold mines. The Anglophone can work in the gold mines. The Francophones don't want to. So she's valuable. They want her there. They don't want her to leave. They want to keep an eye on her. And let's say she does get out and she makes it to Lagos. Maybe she could make it to Brazil, maybe Peru and Colombia, but surely she'd be stopped in Panama, heavily funded by the United States. And there would be cameras there, right? Or if not there, at the southern border of Mexico. And if not there, at the border of the United States. We are going to know all about Princess in 2030. And likely, we're going to return her because we need a presence in Cameroon, and we have cut a deal with them. So she's back in Cameroon no matter what, And she thinks surveillance is a bad idea. That's the point. Surveillance is a bad idea. She's tired of the arms race. She has no choice. She has nowhere to go and no chance to appear or to feel or be 100% American. What is the solution? If you're American tomorrow, please vote. And if you're not American and you're in this room, please encourage every person of voting age tomorrow to do so. That's the hope we have. Thank you.